Dude, first question. Jeremy, what has you tap dancing out of bed? Like, makes you excited or
Like in
inspired.
like in general? This is like a general question or like magic related?
Dude, let's go both. I mean,
Both.
whatever's
Okay.
easy, whatever's easiest to answer for you.
Uh, Tap dancing, running, and honestly, it would be my wife and my kids. It sounds like a bad answer, but honestly, it affected me in a way that I didn't think that it would. I thought it would just be like a logical thing of like, oh, you have a family and little children that depend on you. Now is the time to man up. And it didn't. It was like lizard brain, like must provide for a family. So that. And then magic wise, honestly, it's the Madrid school, the Spanish school. I've been chasing that one now for a couple of years. Um, and just sort of playing with those guys. Victor Pina has had a big effect on me that way and allowed me to sort of chase it. Oddly
When you
enough,
say, sorry, when you say Madrid school, can you flesh that out a little bit? I don't understand what that means.
yeah. So the Madrid school or like the Spanish school of magic is it's. I
It's
mean,
an
yes,
actual school, right?
it's well, sort of.
Okay.
It's more like a culture, honestly.
Okay, cool.
It's a
That's what I was
collection
saying.
of people at this point that they can go deep, they can dive deep. Like I mean, just however you want to go, however deep you want to go into magic, like thoughts on tension and narrative and all of this other stuff. Like they could write books for days just about that, and it will be just as magical as something from like Paul Harris about tarot cards. It just is. So I'm super into those guys. The problem is that for a long time I figured theory was something that fleshed out what you were already working on. And it's very difficult to go from theory into something based on theory, right? But that's sort of what these guys do is that they'll have an idea, but in a lot of ways, they'll structure it from theoretical points into practical. And I'm not used to doing that. I'm used to chasing practical and then flavoring it with theoretical. But when they do it, like the trees grow intertwined. So it's a very intriguing way to think about magic.
I heard what you did there, right? The magical tree, intriguing.
Yes, intriguing. Yes. Let's
Yeah,
pretend like
cool.
I did that on purpose. Yeah. No, totally.
You
Absolutely. Yeah.
didn't?
That is a tougher question, if only because it doesn't make the distinction between necessary but sufficient, right? Like there's a lot of attributes that it would be necessary
Hmm.
to like say you're a good magician, right? Like you got to know what you're doing, right? You got to be able to perform in front of people. You got to be able to like practice a routine. But any one of those things someone might be good at, but it in and of itself is not sufficient. So I'm trying to think of something that is both necessary and sufficient. And I would say it would be that you give a damn.
Ooh.
I got to imagine that if you give a damn, you would chase everything else. If you don't, you'll just chase what you're good at or what you get likes for or what's easiest or whatever. But if you give a damn, that won't be enough. Perfect example, right? You and I know Mark Calabrese, right? For a long time, his character was just sheer abrasion. It was just very almost Gazzo-ish, right? And he sort of like melded into like he's come along with me, right? And it's now like this very endearing sort of brashness that and well like Malik has sort of a similar vibe in terms of like yes this right it can be quasi confrontational but it's also charming as hell. So yeah, I did. That's the other thing is that it's intriguing to see how many people like totally avoid that thing that we would think is absolutely necessary and are still thrillingly active in the magic world. So but in the end I think that's because they give a damn, like whether it be about who they are as performers or the audience's experience, they give a damn enough to not leave it alone. And if anyone's being intellectually honest about it, I think that would be the answer. It depends. I got to imagine there are people who don't give a damn and are still thrillingly successful like that. But as far as I'm concerned, like my hallmark for what a great magician looks like is someone who cares. And they keep caring, even when it's easy to not, even when it's easy to let it slide, even when it would be more expedient to just keep doing the same thing over and over again. And they don't.
As far as I remember, it's not something that you're like not doing shows every, weekend.
No. Yeah.
But I'm always so fascinated to hear a response to this from magicians. So I'm going to ask it anyway. And if there's an answer, cool. If not, it's fine. Um, what was like the most ridiculously missed opportunity that you've had when performing?
It was actually that I had just learned how to steal watches. And I was a little gun shy because I had stolen a Cartier watch off an executive during a show. And he walked up and said, "This better be the same watch or I'm calling the police." And so I stopped doing that. And this guy was like all about the whole pickpocketing magic thing at a show that I had maybe a year later. And he was all about it. And he was the guy, like the whole party was for him. And I didn't do any of it. I said, "Oh man, I wish I wish I could. That's not really my style. I could have stolen his watch. It would have been great. It would have been fine. But I was so gun shy from that previous experience that I didn't. I would have gotten a bomb tip. It would have been great and everything. But yeah, I chickened out. I was so close. I was so close, and I chickened out.
Dang it. That's great, man. That's awesome. And that's real life.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. Honestly, there's been so many times where it was like, oh man, I had this really, really great opportunity, and then because of whatever, the fear of the excuses. I like honestly, there were some time where any excuse was done. We're like, oh God, I wish I could, but I left my refrigerator on. I gotta go check on that. Like, yeah.
That's so true. I did that. That happened to me once.
Blue deck, blue deck, every day. Without a doubt. If I have to choose between the two, I choose blue deck every single time. And there's a very, very particular reason.
Do we have to pay more to hear it?
No,
Because
no,
I'll
no.
I'll pony up.
It's that by and large, red is weirdly more reflective, right? Which meant that if you ever reversed a card, it was easier to spot, one, but also because red is a more excitable color and blue is a much more muted thing. And I always appreciated the more muted performances. So if I had to choose, I would choose a blue deck because it was calmer. They did an experiment, right, where they put a bunch of people like in a theater and just showed the color blue, and everyone just sort of stayed where they were. And then they showed the color red up on the screen, and no one could sit in their seat because it was bothering them. But it's a color thing. It really is yeah, it's a blue all the way. Absolutely. I think okay, so here's my take on this, and I've got a pretty strong opinion on this. I think that that was absolute bubkiss from the first day it was said. If only because most people don't fiddle with cards long enough to think about which designs are normal or not. We do, like we play with them all day long. But even the people who play cards a lot are generally playing with their family or their friends. So they're playing with bridge decks, or they're playing with decks that were owned by grandma since the 1970s. So if no decks look like that deck and they suspect it, Bicycle ain't going to help you, right? It makes sense if you're doing like a casino thing, you use casino cards, absolutely, right? I think the only time it becomes suspicious is if you have like card two or like the lock deck. If the deck is obviously tailor-made for a magic trick, that tends to indicate there is a magical element within the deck. But every other deck, I don't think there's obviously that comes with a gradient. If you're going to bring out, bright pinwheel cards, that might draw a bit more attention than the average card. But I don't think that there is enough context for the average person to gauge what would be a normal deck. They might think available deck, right? They might be used to seeing one, but I don't think they immediately go, oh, that doesn't match the thing that I don't pay attention to, so it must be a trick deck. So I believe absolutely that people can use whatever deck they like by and large, and they'll be just fine.
You know, everybody knows how everybody got their start in Magic, right? It's pretty much the same story. The
Yeah.
question is, how do you foresee your ending? Now, that could be, you know, like legacy, or it could be your literal last moments.
I think it'll be these. I think these will give out. I think I like, well, and even then, my brain won't. And there are plenty of people who could do amazing things with the deck and never have to touch it. John Guastafaro writes books about it all day long, right? But I think for me, because I'm so heavy on the sleight of hand and everything, I got to imagine that eventually these will get harder and harder to. I mean, I'm watching Steve Forty go through it. I'm watching every magician who I've ever known that was a hardcore sleight of hand person as a young man. I'm watching their hands slow down. So I have to imagine my hands are going to slow down. So I'll just have fun until that happens. And then I'll switch over to, I don't know, mentalism. Coins? What would I do? I don't know. Something else. I'll figure it out. But I
I have an
imagine,
idea. I'll tell you later, though.
okay, all right, that
It's
sounds good.
something in the works.
Okay, fair. I believe in certain aspects. I don't believe written media will phase out. And the only reason I say that is look at Kindle, right? If anything, it increased the amount that people read. Magic is a little bit different because nearly all nonfiction, and because you have to work through it, like symbol by symbol, sentence by sentence, right? But I think the idea that ebooks will actually dominate is totally reasonable. I used to work for Borders Books back when they were still a thing, back when they were still a competitor to Barnes and Noble. And everyone was like, no, no one would ever give up these beautiful volumes. And then everyone gave up those beautiful volumes for e-readers, right? Um, so I don't think written media, I don't think media that must be read will phase out. I think there will always be people who that would be the preferred method of communication. Um, I do think that physical books will become more of a collector's item than an absolute necessity. Uh, and then as far as like whether that's a good thing or not, again, I that depends. If there are people who think that, you know, the only way that I can actually read and test myself and try to come up with things is by reading it minute by minute, yeah, then I get it. That's going to be a horrible day. But if it's someone like me, like any of the magic that I learned in person. I learned by either taking lessons or bribing them with in and out or any number of other things where I could just sit down with them and then they taught me. And that ended up being more effective than reading. Because then when I went back to read the books, I had all of this interpersonal context for what was meant. Because sometimes if you don't understand what's read, there's no one there to correct you. You can't look in the index for help, and there's no answer guide. So you're sort of stuck with your creativity, and that can be good if you already know what you're talking about. If you don't, then you're just sitting there confused. So from that perspective, I think that yeah, eventually it will be phased out as a form, but not a format, if that makes any sense. That's a great question. Um,
Like, and
see,
don't
a
say
few of
Royal
these have
Road.
been, no, I'm not going to say Royal Road. Um, bear with me here. So,
You don't have your Dewey Decimal Index that you can just skim through.
no, no, this is definitely doing it by eye. Oh, you know what? Yeah, no, that would do it. Designing Miracles by Darwin Ortiz. And I say that only because he provided a structure and a vocabulary. I don't care whether you see it in his work. It is one of the most brilliant books ever written in magic because it gave a framework. And then right after that is Ascanio. So start with Darwin, work your way into Ascanio. But if you start with Ascanio, it's sort of like taking like a college course before you know how to speak the language well.
Which Ascanio book?
All of them, any of them, literally,
The
seriously.
next one. The next one.
Yeah, yeah. Get through that one and then find the other one, and then go for the one with the knives. Like just yeah, all of it.
Sweet. I actually have the Designing Miracles. It's not going to be in stock for a little bit longer, but I have it ordered, so it was like reassuring to hear you say that. It's like
Yeah,
sweet.
no, no, no. That one's definitely it. Yeah, it was because of what it did to wake me up to that level of thinking. It
Oh,
wasn't
cool.
that like I don't base my magic on it necessarily. I
Sure,
don't
sure.
go through and be like, damn it, is this following page 43? And what it did do was it woke up that part of my brain that made me ask the question. It made me give a damn. So yeah, no, designing miracles, go for it.
So, Jeremy, you and Alec Blanco started the Monday Night Jams about 10 years-ish ago,
Mhm.
plus or minus. And I know for me and for many others, it's been just a really valuable source, right? Community. I mean, even just going there to hang out, which was really great. My question for you is, do any success stories come to mind that were a product, of that valuable community? And if I need to if I need to flesh that out a little bit more, in what I mean, I can do that. I don't mean like personal success stories, although you could talk about that. I mean like, there was that one kid who would just go there every day, and then, after 2 years, this he moved to
Actually,
Vegas.
yeah. Oh, you know what? There's a kid. Oh, I talk with him nearly every single Friday. Um, dedicated, showed up again nearly like every single Monday and was there to study, working on it. Now he's a flourishing member of the junior program at the castle, still chasing it, honestly coming up with like some really good stuff where I was like, my God, have you like, did you send that to a company yet? Because you might want to send that to a company or something. Um, but I would say like if we did it for that, but again, I don't want that. The whole point of the jam was sort of come as you are, right?
Exactly, exactly.
I did these magic clubs when I was a kid, and where there are dues and there's a newsletter, and you got to show up and perform every once in a while, and you need to strive for things. And I didn't want to strive for jack diddly squat. I just wanted to fiddle around with cards, and so I wanted to preserve a place that gave me that, right? Because that's what Alec did for me. Was we were both going through a tough time. He and I sat across from each other. Whoever had the cards got to do the talking, not the other way around, right? So whoever needed to do the talking, you hand them the cards, they get the mat, the other person just listened, right? And then slowly people started to show up. And then it was a jam, right? Every Monday. And then it became something of like, this is our jam. I preserved it mainly because I was fighting to keep this one place that was safe for magic. It didn't matter how experienced you were. It didn't matter if you had a show in Vegas or if you just picked up your first book, you could just show up, and it was Hogwarts for a night. And we did it for a solid 7 years. We did that, and I would say that was the success story. Is that for a solid 7 years we kept that safe.
Jeremy,
Yeah.
how many magicians does it take to bring a card to the top?
Um, Wait, are you asking me for an answer, or are you just going to complete a joke? I just need to know where we're at
I'm,
because I
I'm,
could
I,
give you a pretty good answer. Okay.
I have no punchline to this.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then
Yeah.
I've got a good
Oh, cool,
one. Okay.
cool.
Yeah. No, it takes four. One to actually perform ambitious card, then three to sit back and reminisce about how good the old top card was. Don't get caught up in your head. Like consistency is king. Honestly, I would say one of the main reasons why I've stayed about where I'm at is because I found a frequency that worked with the rest of my life. But if you wanted to get big on social media, the problem is that the algorithm is always changing. So you have two options. You could either chase the algorithm, which means you will always be changing what you are doing. You just will, because you'll have to keep up with the algorithm. Or you could go to the algorithm and do your own thing, but chase it so hard that everyone, like, you're so good they can't ignore you anymore. And I'm more of a mind to do that. I'm more of a mind that you should say screw the algorithm, because the algorithm will change. Whatever the algorithm is doing, it will do something different a month from now, because they don't want anyone being able to play the game. They don't want anyone gaming the algorithm to gain 1 million followers. And the idea that you could become an influencer, most social media platforms are moving away from that idea because they want to do the influencing, not have people or cultures that they have to convince. So it means that the only thing that you can do is make it very transactional. So post on there and post the things that you enjoy doing, post things that you can at least be proud of. And if it's not perfect, then it's not perfect. It's okay. It'll be gone in a week. You're fine, you know. But consistency, yeah, right. But consistency, and make sure that you don't sell your soul in the process. And I think you'll do great.
Perfect.
And give a damn. Yeah.
Man, this has been really great. Probably got like 23 seconds left, so I'm gonna get this last question in. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.